Hey guys, on today's episode of the podcast Thinking is Infinite, we talk about the difficulties I've had with social interactions, the best and worst Halloween candies. We talk about the modern state of commercials and society, and we end it on an IRL segment with how to grow our podcast. And yeah, let's start the podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Thinking is Infinite podcast with Joe
and John.
And today we're going to be talking about a little topic about autism. Now,
every episode we introduce Joseph as a 15-year-old, very highly functional autistic teenager. And so if you're familiar with the podcast, you have heard before each first segment we talk about some subjects that Joseph has had to either overcome or maybe struggles with. And the subject we want to talk about today is communication, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that I have had to overcome over the years. So that is something that it's something that many autistic kids can relate to, no matter where they are on the spectrum. Unlike certain other things, there are things that different people on different sides of the spectrum have that are different, but there are things that kind of overlap between them, and communication is probably kind of one of them.
I agree, Joe. I think communication and being able to converse with peers is definitely a challenge that I think I've seen in you. One thing I do notice about you, Joe, is that I think you have a very good, strong ability to communicate with adults.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it easier communicating with adults than peers, kids your age?
Kinda. It really depends on what I'm going with. You know what I mean? Because sometimes if I have a problem, it's easier for me at least to communicate with an adult. But if I'm talking about something that is just a fun topic, I'm kind of easier going with friends. But even then, I'm very much kind of introverted. I've kind of keep to myself. I talk to myself a lot. I don't really go out with friends. I'm not very social overall. Even to this day, I still don't really talk to my friends. I'll do it once in a while, but I won't really go out of that introverted bubble. I'm very much keeping to myself. I still do that.
How does that make you feel? Do you enjoy being a little more introverted? Do you want to be more social? That's something I always kind of wonder.
That's actually something. That's a good question. Kind of both ways, really. There's always been a part of me that wants to step out and go and be more social, but much of me kind of wants to be very much alone, just kind of doing my own thing, watching things, reading things that are passionate subjects to me, those kind of those kind of activities, listening to music. I listen to a lot of music, so that's kind of something that is sort of a conflict within myself going on right now, but at this moment, more of me wants to be within myself than going out there, so that's kind of something.
It's a little more, now you want to be on your own more than being as social at this very moment.
Yeah, correct.
Now could you tell me an instance where you've tried, or you wanted to be social and maybe it didn't work out?
Actually, there are certain times where, it's not it's never really backfire really badly, but I feel there are times where I'll try to call my friend, and what'll happen is my other side will fight back, and it will kind of go against the urge to try to socialize and kind of step out of that zone.
What is that other side telling you?
It's more telling me hey, I want to be alone. I don't want to it's very uncomfortable with socializing in general. It's kind of telling me to stick to myself, and it just kind of wants to kind of be alone, read stuff, those kind of things. And then the other side wants to be more social and wants to increase bonds with other people and really wants to make friends. So that's kind of something that is sort of a conflict for me.
Now, has there been a time where you felt like when you did step out and you did want to open up, a really strong, a good outcome?
Yes, actually. There was one time I talked to my friend. We talked for like hours, and we had a really good conversation when I really managed to fight back against the urge to keep to myself. And it's something that I'm actually still kind of going against, even to like this day. I'll still kind of have these battles within myself, you know, these kind of
So you're able to speak for hours to one of your friends?
Yeah,
That's
actually.
great. Was it at home? Was it on the phone? Was it like
it was
in school?
it was actually with the Google Duo, you know, that app, kind of like FaceTime for Apple devices, but it's like FaceTime, but it's for Android, because Android doesn't really have like, you know, Apple iOS apps, so they have their own version called Google Duo. But what I don't like about Duo is it drains a lot of your battery, as does probably FaceTime as well. Because it takes a lot of energy to really like show someone's face and talk. It actually kind of has like signal difficulties and things like that, but we do manage to kind of overcome that, and we talk a long time.
So when was the last time you talked to this friend?
Like a few months ago, actually.
Is this a friend from school, or is this someone else?
It's a friend from school, yeah.
Boy or girl?
Girl.
Nice. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really nice. And when was the last time you actually texted or spoken to her?
Well, we don't really text a lot, because we just kind of Google Duo, so around like a few months ago, the same thing.
Okay.
Because I feel like texting just doesn't really get it all the way through. I feel like talking to someone is far better, you know what I mean?
Now, have you desired to call her since, or
Yes, actually, I have many times, and once again, the urge always comes fighting, you know, that sort of battle thing that always happens. It happens over the course of, like, days and things, and we'll constantly fight each other as to whether I should call her again or just stay to myself, because there is still a part of me that's very afraid to go out and wants to just keep in. So that's something that it's kind of a kind of hard to explain thing, but it's something
you're giving a lot of insight to anyone who's listening. Giving insight to me, because I was always curious about what internally you're thinking. Do you want to, or are you happy to be kind of on your own and doing your own thing, or do you desire more interaction with others and friends and stuff like that? Now, is it someone you go to school with?
Yes, it is.
So it's someone you go to school with, someone in your grade. Do you say hello in school?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do sometimes. But we only usually meet in school because we have different classes this year, so.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it may be a good idea if you even say, listen, you know, I'd like to call you. Did you ever express to her that sometimes you want to call, but sometimes you feel a little awkward about it?
Actually, no. I've just kind of kept back to myself. I haven't really expressed this to anyone. You're actually the first person to hear about it.
And everyone listening.
Actually, yes. Yeah, that too. But, yeah, actually, that's true. I've never expressed this sort of thing because I've just found it too difficult to really explain. And so I've kind of kept that to myself, and all these types of things just happening within my head. It happens for a lot of different things, but for social interactions especially, so.
Now, what do you think about actually mentioning that to her and say, listen, there's times I do want to call, but sometimes I just want to be on my own and want to not want to. Do you ever feel like you could do that or not?
I don't know. I feel like part of me is very nervous about actually mentioning that, because it kind of feels like she will understand, but then the other part wants to express that or wants to come out, which actually kind of matches up with which one is antisocial and which one's very social, kind of matches up. So, you know, it's something that, it's a debacle that I have a lot, and it's something that sometimes I try to, like, silence the voices trying to tell me things, but it'll always kind of come back.
Well, when you're developing interactions with others, it's always good to communicate what you're feeling, and I think that's something that I haven't always done that the correct way in my past.
Yeah.
I sometimes fail even today. I mean, it's very common to just kind of stay inside your own head, but then other people may wonder that are you sad or you do not like them anymore or are you avoiding them? So I think, Joe, although it may be difficult and it may make you a little nervous, it may be a good idea to say, listen, sometimes I feel like I'm not sure if I want to talk to you, but sometimes I'm a little nervous about talking to you. And I think if she's a sweet person, she's going to appreciate that.
Yeah, that's something that, that's a pretty good point, actually. Something I haven't thought about.
And so one of the things we also like to do is also like to, I've reached out on forums and tried to get questions that people may want to ask you.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that I was able to gather over the past week was, it says, I'd love to know what he thinks that have been the biggest things, therapies, coping techniques, or life-changing moments in your life that have made you feel like you can have a really good life.
That's actually a very good question. I've had multiple therapies over the years. Some have taken a while, like the food therapy. Others I've been able to gradually get off of, like I no longer go to PT and speech. And others I still go to today, like OT and counseling. But
how's the counseling helping?
It is helping. It's kind of helping me kind of mitigate those conflicts and kind of communicate better and help develop these communication skills. But they are still happening, and they're still kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So how often do you do the counseling?
I think once a week. We do it every Friday, so during our lunch period.
Have you ever mentioned what you mentioned to the broadcast audience and myself? That you once spoke to someone for a long time?
I have mentioned that element, the whole idea that I've spoken to someone, but I haven't mentioned the conflicts at all. I'm very internal about that. I don't really usually want to reveal it until now. I've kind of gone out, but...
Well, I think it might be a really good idea to talk to the counselor about something like that, because I think they would be able to give you some professional techniques. I can tell you that, in my opinion, I think it's good to try to overcome that. I remember being a kid. I remember being, a young adult, and right before you're ready to make a phone call to anyone, a friend or, a female friend or a male friend or whoever it is, and you just feel like that nervousness, that weird feeling that you don't want to, and then sometimes you just hang up the phone and like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that's something really good that you should communicate on your next counseling session and just get an opinion and see, and then come back to our the audience here and say if it was good advice or was not good advice.
Yeah, maybe I should do that. It's kind of something that I have been contemplating about for a long time, so something that,
And how about some coping techniques? How many some techniques that you think that are preparing you for your future?
Well, coping techniques can be many different things. First of all, for stress, what I'll usually do is take, 10 deep breaths, and by the time I'm done with that, I'm usually, not stressed out anymore. For anger, it's a bit more difficult. I'll usually have to, kind of walk around, kind of get away from the situation, then come back to it once I'm less angry. I'll vent it to myself. I'll tell to myself how bad this is, oh my god, and then I'll just come back and be not angry anymore. And that actually does work most of the time.
Yeah, I think... I think one of the things... Do they ever talk to you about talking to yourself and try to internally instead of... Sometimes I notice you outwardly speak.
Mm-hmm.
Have speech or counseling talked to you about that?
Not really. They haven't really talked about, talking to myself, because here's the thing, actually, some of my friends do it who I don't think are autistic, so it's something that people do just to, kind of keep their thoughts, kind of know what they're thinking, and just that's what I do. I just kind of want to keep my thoughts inside my head, don't want to lose them. So that's what I kind of do to
I do love the breathing technique. I think that's a really strong one. And the counseling also is a really good thing, especially moving forward. Now you're hitting your teenage years, you're hitting your puberty years. How have you noticed now that your voice has changed? You've gotten taller. You're going to be shaving soon.
Yeah.
What are those things? How are you feeling about those next phases? And now you're almost to the point of going to be choosing a school in a few years.
Yeah, I'm kind of actually nervous about the whole college thing. I'm pretty I'm kind of like nervous about having to live on my own, kind of having to kind of not only go away from my parents, but also to go to a whole different school that isn't as familiar to me. I'm also kind of nervous about making new friends that might not have that I wouldn't have had in our school, because I think my friends might be moving on to different schools. So it's something that I have kind of been nervous about.
Did you think about staying home and commuting to a school instead of dorming
actually,
at
I
a school?
have been thinking about going to like a school nearby, like Hofstra or like one of those like nearby schools, so I can at least like kind of stay within Long Island and not really have to fly out too much, because I don't really, and it's also expensive to fly, and dorming costs more, so I might actually want to go to a school like Hofstra or like Stony Brook or something, and just kind of stay within our area.
Yeah. And do you think you'd be ready in now about 2.5 years to be on your own?
I think so, yeah. With the right support, I can definitely do it. I can be ready to kind of go on my own and be kind of independent or wholly independent for myself,
So, now to tie up this segment, communication-wise, what are you thinking that as far as what are you looking to improve? Do you want more interaction, or where are you right now? Do you think you're going to want more interaction?
I feel like I kind of might want more interaction with others, and that's something that I have been trying to improve. Like I said, there's been that kind of force blocking it, but I have been trying my best to try to improve that side of things.
Do you know of any forums that are specifically for kids like yourself? Out there, any platforms? I
actually don't really know of any. Like,
there should be one.
I think there probably is, but I haven't really found any. If you actually do know some forums, I'd love for you guys to leave them in the review section or like the comment section or whatever, because those would be good ideas to try to help other kids who might also struggle with these things.
Yeah, I would love for there to be some type of a social forum, like a social media group maybe that is only dedicated for kids that maybe have special needs and difficult times communicating with others, because this way everyone could feel in a safe environment. Obviously there'd have to be some checks and balances, because you don't want any creepers getting in there, right, Joe?
Yeah, you don't want that. But yeah, I feel like it is a good idea to try to help people who have these problems communicate and go out to the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you shared this with us, Joe.
Yeah, I am too. Now we can move on to the next segment, our little fun segment for this week.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this segment that we have going on here. And right now we are closing in on we're 1 week away from Halloween, correct?
Yes, we are.
And one of the things that Joe is notorious for is loving his candy, right?
Yep, I am.
And this is something that he chose this week to do a top five
Halloween best candies? And worst Halloween candies.
All right. Joe's thought of this. I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, so for the 5th worst, gummy bears. I don't really like gummy bears. They're very fruity. They don't really have as much of a unique flavor as I love chocolatey candies, so I'm not a big fan of those kind of things, with some exceptions.
I have a feeling most of these are not going to be chocolate in this worst
five.
Not really.
Not really, but there will be honorable mentions that are chocolate candies, but not ones that are here.
I could see. I never seen you really eat gummies, and gummies. You're right. Gummies, they're very hard to differentiate.
And the
flavors.
big problem, they get stuck to your teeth.
Yes.
I hate that. I despise that. They get so bad. You have to like pull them out like gum. It's just no. I don't like them. And but it's not as bad as our fourth one. Candy corn. Candy corn, actually, I like the taste of, but I hate its reaction. When you try a bite of candy corn, you are immediately induced to a pain on your teeth. Now, normally, this pain, usually it kind of goes away. Candy corn has so much sugar in it, and it's actually pure sugar, like legitimately pure sugar. Go and look it up. But, it is so painful when you take a bite. It's just... I don't like it when you do that. It's like...
I think I was surprised. I thought you'd put candy corn at number one, because I think candy corn is the most polarizing candy on the planet. Either people love it
or they despise it.
Despise it and hate it.
It's something that I'm actually kind of in the middle on, because
you don't
like
mind
I said,
the
I like
flavor,
the taste. I just don't like that
the
reaction there. Number 3... kind of Skittles. Skittles are kind of like they're kind of like M&Ms, but the problem with Skittles is that they have like way too much of like a fruity flavor. So they kind of have, that kind of like a fruity M&M, but I just don't, they're just not for me. I know why people might like them, because they do have a very strong flavor in that regard, but they're just not for me, honestly.
Yeah, I could tell you don't really particularly care for the fruity, chewy things.
Actually, at number 2, we have Starburst, but a very specific kind. The yellow and the orange ones. I actually like the red and the pink ones, but I don't like the yellow and the orange.
I've noticed there's always more orange
and yellow than
pink.
red and pink.
There's hardly any pinks.
Those are the best ones, though. The red and the pink actually taste good. I don't like the yellow and the orange. If you like those, you're probably getting a lot of candy from other people who probably don't like yellow and orange, because they're just not very popular. Their red and their pink flavors are far more popular than their yellow and orange.
What about those trick-or-treating people that actually take the Starburst out of the package and dump them in there, so you can only grab one of each and stuff like that instead of giving a multi-pack?
No, I feel like it is probably better, because you could probably get some red and pinks, but you have a better chance than
if you're there early.
Yeah, if you're there early. Number 2.
I think it's the number 1.
Is that number 1? Okay, number 1. The worst candy out there is probably Jelly Bellies. Jelly Bellies are just very bland. They don't have any flavor. Unlike the other ones, which have flavor, and the flavors they do have are just not good. Like, not even just fruity, like, just not good. Like, to anyone. I don't see how anyone likes Jelly Bellies. I've never been a fan of them. I've always kind of disliked them.
You've had sensory issues. We've talked about that in previous episodes. And I'm finding that your list of your worst 5 are either like a jelly candy or some type of... You're not a big fan of the fruit bursty candies, right?
But my number 5 best is going to prove you wrong.
Okay.
Number 5 best is actually Swedish Fish. Swedish Fish I actually like. I like Swedish Fish for... the fact that they actually do, unlike those other fruity candies, I like their flavor. I like how it's kind of balanced more and not overly fruity to the point where it kind of gets annoying.
All right, I see
but
that.
I like Swedish Fish.
I see that. The Swedish Fish have a little more of a little less on the bursting of fruit.
And I like them.
Like
I actually would eat Swedish Fish over other fruity candies. Though I don't like them as much as the number 4. Number 4 best is probably Three Musketeers. Now, Three Musketeers, I was debating about putting that at number 5, but I decided to put Swedish Fish there because it's like one of the only fruit candies I actually like. But number 4, Three Musketeers. Three Musketeers, they're good, but they're not as flavorful. They're kind of...
It's basic. There's
not the
nougat.
The nougat.
It the nougat?
It is nougat, yes.
And just chocolate. That's it. No caramel, no nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the basic candy. It's not like bad, but it's not like, I wouldn't call it absolutely amazing. Number 3, the Pink and Red Starbursts. That's where I'm putting those in.
All right.
So those two, the red and the pink, I actually like those. Those are actually really good candies. I like to get on Halloween because those are actually good candies, you know.
All right. So now we're hitting the
number two. Number 2 is Snickers. Snickers bars, I mean, you can't really say much about them that's bad. They have caramel, they got peanuts, they got nougat, and they got chocolate. I mean, what else do you want?
It is a fan favorite for many years.
Uh-huh.
And even when I was little, Snickers bars were very popular, and I see why they're still popular today.
Yeah, and the number 1 best Halloween candy is actually kind of a tie, but kind of not really. It's kind of hard to explain. It's Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and the Reese's Take 5. They're both Reese's candies, but they're a bit different. I think the Reese's Take 5 is a little bit better, but the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, obviously a classic, you know, with peanut butter and chocolate. Great combination, great marriage right there. But then you also have the other one, Reese's Take 5, which then they came out pretty recently.
Before we get to the Reese's Take 5, hold that thought for a moment, because they're both fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Reese's is... Did you know worldwide, every year they come out with the most popular Halloween candy, and every year that I've seen this countdown, you have been right on the money with it. It's always been the Reese's. It's always been the top one.
Yeah.
Now, I personally love the dark. I love the dark, and that peanut butter, perfect. So, Now tell me more about the Take 5. What makes that
Take 5 is I think it's peanut butter, it's like chocolate, peanut butter, nougat, pretzels, and caramel all in one. So it's like Take 5, you know? And that's kind of what makes it very special, because it has this like sweet and salty flavor, while also having, of course, caramel, nougat, and peanut butter, which really makes it something that I personally love to get. It's not very common on Halloween, but when you do find it, you're pretty satisfied with it, you know what I mean? You're not very dissatisfied unless you have a peanut allergy, but that's something totally different.
Now, Joe, you are 15.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Halloween is coming up on, next Sunday, right? Are you going to be going trick-or-treating?
I think so, probably. I have a scarecrow costume,
all right.
you know?
All right. So you going to go with your brothers?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's
all right. So, if you live in the neighborhood of Joseph, so somewhere in Belmore, stock up on Take 5s. If you buy Starburst, remove the yellow and the what, orange? Is that the other one you don't like?
Yeah.
Yellow and orange, and just give the pink. If you see the scarecrow walking down the block, make sure he's got Take 5s. Make sure he's got Reese's. Make sure he's got Swedish Fish. Right? Because it's funny. And the pink Starburst. But right?
And orange also really. I don't even know why they have those flavors.
The tall kid that's a scarecrow.
Okay. That's actually kind of funny. On to our next segment.
Hey, everybody. On to this portion of our podcast today. Joe, this is a topic that Joe wanted to talk about today, and it's about television commercials.
Commercials.
Yes, Joe does a massive amount. If you heard the first podcast, I think we talked about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But Joe is like a big kid on YouTube, and he's constantly watching commentary videos, and he loves to learn about businesses and marketing. And sometimes you'll dig deep into technology. It's just whatever happens to hit your brain. And one of the things that's been hitting your brain is the commercials. So, Joe, I'm going to just kick it off to you. And kind of how the
quality has changed. Now, back in the 80s and 90s, they used to take more risks with TV. Back before, like, the 2010s, many commercials, and even kind of in the early 2010s, commercials used to take more of a risk. They used to do more kind of risky things to draw people in. They had like this commercial where people were like kind of showing like private parts and like kind of doing like they had commercials where people were kind of doing things that were just kind of outlandish or would be seen as cancelable in some communities today, and they were pretty successful. But now, what I've noticed is many commercials are now very generic. They don't really want to take many risks. They don't want to go very far. They don't want to have these type of
It's funny.
things.
It's funny you mention that. Someone that I was listening to had mentioned something very similar in regards to the commercials, and you know what he said? You can always tell about society by watching the commercials during that time period.
That's true, actually.
and I think he nailed it. When you were in the 70s, it was like, it was a showing or 60s, it was showing a woman. Make sure you're cooking dinner for your husband and making sure he's fed and his shoes are nice and clean and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the commercials as they've evolved in the 70s and 80s as times changed. And like you were saying in the 90s. And in the 80s and 90s, I remember yes, you're right. Commercials some were funny, some was drop dead hilarious.
Yeah.
And it was a little more riskier and a little more risk taken and taking chances. And you all right there, bud?
Yeah, because companies could afford to take more risks at that point in time.
Now, and I notice with society now, you're right. They've and it really plays along not only to commercials, but also, in my opinion, Joe, comedies. I find it so hard to find a really funny movie these days, and I think everyone's so afraid of being canceled and so afraid of making or upsetting a group or someone. Now listen, there's some things that shouldn't be off limits.
Yes.
You should never make fun of anyone, in my opinion, with special needs.
Appearance, their sexuality, those kind of things, but it's also kind of like a pro and con type of thing.
I heard a comedian actually say recently that you don't make fun of people that can't defend themselves. Everyone else, go get them. And make fun of and enjoy and joke around. And I thought that was actually a really good thing. It means, all right, so who are the people that can't defend themselves? Someone maybe with special needs. Maybe a child. Like there's certain things that are off limits.
Kind of like that are just petty to make fun of, or things that
just
actually
flat out mean.
Are just rude. But the problem is with this sort of canceling and things, it's made people afraid to speak. It's made people afraid to take any risks. And it's like this sort of shadow that kind of hangs over everything, where both parties don't like it, but if they actually admit it, they'll get fired because of this very loud group. And it's not even that large. Many people don't like them or support them, but they're loud, and that's kind of what matters. They have more of a voice. They have a louder voice.
And it's so interesting.
And it overrides any voices that are reasonable or...
Now, what's impressive, Joe, that you're mentioning this is something that I have. I have a job, and while I'm working, sometimes I put on a podcast and listen to it. I have a job that requires a lot of reading, so I'll have it on in the background and stuff. But I'm really focusing on my job, but it's on in the background. And one of the things that I constantly hear over and over again is commentary regarding exactly what you're saying, Joe. And here's Joe, a 15-year-old that's not a part of that lexicon, not a part of the podcast world or political world or commentary world. He's just noticing, and he's watching YouTube videos and seeing some commentary of what he saw from back in the day, older commercials and commercials now, and he's seeing it. So I think, Joe, you're onto something here, and I think a lot of people see it right now, is that there's a big, humongous difference between how comedy, commercials, a lot of commercials are funny. Well, they used to be. And it's almost like they've taken comedy out of commercials.
Out of it, because, like I said, they're afraid to take any risks. And it's not just commercials, but everything. If you don't agree with someone's exact opinion, we actually talked about this in a previous episode, but if you don't agree with someone's exact opinion, you're being canceled, you're being called a bigot, you're being called a bad person, and it's just something that isn't a good idea. It's not healthy for society's growth at all.
No, I think everyone has to get to the point in life is that understanding that that the opinions that even Joseph and I have, and maybe not your opinion as the listener, or vice versa. And you know what? It's okay. If you can have a certain opinion, Joe can have a certain opinion, I can have a certain opinion. At the end of the day, there is enough common ground that we can all be happy with each other.
Yeah, have your own opinion, but don't force it onto others. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just have it, if you disagree, that's fine, but, like, you don't have to go into this full argument or call someone out because you don't agree with their exact perspective or their worldview or whatever.
And I find it funny, there's certain TV shows, Joe, that go too far and try to be all woke. Like, they'll put in a scene, they'll put every race, every gender, every sexual orientation at one dinner table. And I'm like, that's not real life. That really doesn't always happen. Most people at the dinner table, you don't cover the entire spectrum of the entire world at one Thanksgiving table.
Probably not. Like, actually, most families are kind of a particular race or they're kind of like, because think about it. If you are an African American and you're marrying like a white person, you're gonna have mainly brown kids, right? You're not gonna have many people who are Latinos in a family of mainly African Americans. It just doesn't make sense unless you married someone who is Latino. But if you have like two African Americans who are married to each other, why would you have a Latino kid? That makes no sense.
Well, that's the thing that makes me laugh. That's the thing that makes me laugh about some of the commercials. Is like you'll have a whole table of every. It's like the whole globe at the dining room table.
Like the UN, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the United Nations at Thanksgiving meal. And you know what? If you happen to have a family that's blended and you have mixed races, good
that's
for
fine,
you. Absolutely.
Like I said,
when you're throwing it out there,
it's mainly because of artificiality rather than reality.
And
the problem is that it's not genuine. Many of these things, they kind of.
It's almost like they have a checklist, Joe. They're almost like, did you get
LGBT people? Yeah, we checked that off our list. Let's do, we have to throw an Asian in there, because why not? Let's check that off.
They go with the globe. They take the globe and they go, okay, you.
And it's also, the bad thing is they're all tokens. They're just kind of like tokens being used for these types of projects rather than actually having something deep to add. They're usually not, they don't add anything to the story, and they're just kind of thrown in there.
You know what, Joe? I do agree with you. I think that obviously, listen.
If it adds to the story, and if the character has a development, it's a good thing, but.
And you're right. We're all coming into a society. I always think, my personal view on this is that as the next generation and the next generation comes, we're all going to be a mixed culture, because there's going to be generations that and as every generation goes,
mixed, I feel like.
So fine, good. That's a great thing. Who cares? I don't really care. But when I think not only television, movies, commercials, it's almost like they're forcing it out there, and I'm looking at it, I'm laughing at it, going, "Oh, this is so obvious." You're not doing it for the story. You're doing it because you feel like you have to do the checklist. Okay, you have to put this race or this gender,
because
or
people
this
get angry
orientation.
when like there's not enough representation in a story, because a story, thing is, representation should match the story. If you have a story about, like an LGBT character, and the LGBT character is written very well, they have character depth, and they actually add something to the story, go ahead and use it. But if you're just forcing a group in because you want to look better, it's kind of not really that great. That's not good representation at all. And it's also bad because, speaking of, cancel culture, because a lot of the cancel culture people, they get more offended than the groups themselves do. A lot of the time, the groups of people that they claim to fight for don't even get offended at it, and they're essentially getting offended at something that the other group is like, no, that's not offensive, though.
The warriors out there. Well, you know what? It's a really funny show, and I think it's one of those shows that has a wild diversity of characters, but also incorporates incredibly excellent writing and comedy. Is the show Modern Family. And it's funny, that show's been on maybe 10 to 12 years now, I think, at least. And I watched the first few seasons, and I hadn't watched it in years. And now I'm just flipping it on at night, at 10 o'clock at night, or whatever it's on, and I'm laughing my butt off at these old episodes. And it's a whole bunch of sets of it's a whole extended family, and there's a same-sex couple with a kid, and there's a family of one older gentleman and a younger woman, and they're married and they have a kid, and then there's a big family of 2 girls and 1 boy. Joe, let me tell you something. When they wrote this show, they didn't have a checklist. They wanted to write a show that's funny.
Because they wanted to write the show that had that.
It has characters across the whole entire spectrum, but it's hilarious. So to me, it's write the story, make it interesting, and fill in the characters instead of saying we need to put in this character.
Make it natural, not artificial. Because artificial stuff is never really as good as natural. It should flow. Okay? That's all it's asking for. It should flow. It shouldn't be forced into place because you have to fill some kind of checklist of things. It should just be have these characters and have them be a certain race. Like, it should be like their entire character shouldn't be that they are that race or that group. It should just be they're LGBT and they have other characteristics that define them and define them personally. It makes it more authentic. It makes it more real.
I agree.
Isn't it good to be more real rather than just fake and artificial? I mean, that's not how the world works.
Joe, I think that's an excellent point. Now, my last thing as we wrap up this session, how do you think it's going to change? You've known because you watch a lot of videos about older commercials and older comedies and things like that. How do you think it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think it's going to become even more woke, or do you think it's going to go in the opposite direction and actually become a little more, hey, everyone relax and enjoy a show and just laugh?
That's actually, I think that the thing is, I feel like we're going in this direction, at least right now, where anything can kind of be canceled. Everyone's afraid to call that out. So until that happens, I feel like it might become even more woke than it already is. It's just gonna continue down that path because people aren't even like leftists and rightists, they both don't like it, but they're afraid to call it out, and as long as they're afraid to call it out, it won't change. If people call it out and stop it and actually go against these type of cancel culture and things like that, it might actually be something that we can just all enjoy something and just have it be real and authentic. But if it doesn't happen and the cancel culture becomes strong enough, then it will start to really have an effect.
Well, one of my favorite comedians, because I am an avid, I enjoy good, pure comedians and funny humans. I find it to be, the way they think is on a different level, and I'm just always enamored by comedians. And one of my favorite comedians says this: if someone tells me to apologize, I tell them blank you. No, I'm not apologizing. No, I am a comedian and I'm supposed to make people laugh, and I'm never going to say I'm sorry for what I'm doing. And because he does his own boundaries. He's never going to insult someone who can't defend themselves, but he's going to make fun of everybody. And I enjoy that, and I'm hoping that the pendulum swings back in the direction of, hey, let's enjoy to laugh. Let's laugh again.
That's what I hope too. Because
everyone just lighten up.
It's something that's pretty good. You need to just enjoy yourself rather than constantly in this like state of everything must be perfect. Everything has to be like this. Everything has to be like that. It's not healthy for you either. Yeah, it's harming you. It's just have fun. Just release yourself from this. It's not healthy at all.
I agree, Joe.
For society or
it's
for
amazing
you.
how commercials turned into a whole societal session on how people are.
Well, commercials represent the age. It's like you said. Commercials represent society at that point.
Exactly.
They do a good job at that. Okay. Hey, anyway, we're on to our IRL segment. Hey guys, welcome to our IRL segment. We are in our car and we are
in the Jeep Cherokee Studios, like we like to say, right?
Yeah, that's what we like to say. And we are leaving. We're actually going back to our house, and
back to Joe's house,
yes,
actually. And my house is a little ways down the road. Mm-hmm. And so, Joe, one of the things that it's been fun about doing this podcast is, we weren't even watching the rankings. We got an email about how we actually ranked in the U.S. and in the top 200, and in Australia as 75. Because,
yeah, it's kind of been fun watching this whole thing grow and bloom.
And you know what I was actually doing some research of how the heck did we rank. And one of the things that I noticed was one of the things I was reading. I was like, how did these podcasts rank? Who ranks them? Is it viewers? Is it likes? Is it follows? Is it downloads? One of the things that's very important is if you do enjoy this podcast, hit the rating, and listen, we love 5 stars. Leave a rating or leave a comment, and that really helps boost the podcast. And boosting the podcast, what it's going to do is it's going to get it in front of other people. It's going to be putting it somewhere on a top.
It's going to be putting somewhere on other people's.
Listen.
Yeah, and it's especially helpful for people who have the same autistic thing and, might want to express themselves, maybe want to communicate. And it's also something that I'm also very passionate about this as well, this whole podcast. It's been a pretty good journey so far. And, I kind of want to see it grow. I want to see it kind of go to,
And the way it can grow out there is Joe and I are gonna do our thing and keep reaching out to people in the special needs community and also friends of ours, and try to get it to grow that way. But the best way to grow it is you out there.
Yes,
everyone who's actually listening to this right now and saying, "Yeah, I have a friend who has a child who's autistic," or my cousin is, and share it with them. Click on the share link and send it to them, or just tell them to Google "Thinking is Infinite," because if you just Google us, it's right there.
Yeah.
And have them listen to the podcast. And one of the things about our podcast is we always try to be positive, right, Joe?
I even criticism does help, because criticism is kind of needed for things to grow. If you don't like something, think about it. Something about our podcast. Nice. Be nice about it. Don't be insult us, but tell us. We can improve things, because if you don't like, think this is good, but I think you need to work on this, tell us. Don't be afraid of that, because criticism is important. Good, constructive criticism, obviously, but criticism is something that is used to improve, something that is used to make things better. It does. It makes things better.
Well, and also, if we can make a positive impact
on someone else, it's a good thing.
Or a new parent that right now his child has been diagnosed with autism, and
they're kind of stressful.
They're living in uncertainty right now. They don't know what's going on with their child and what's going to become of this child who right now has been diagnosed with something.
Yeah.
And there's no cure. It's something you have to work on. And one of the things that we want to convey is hope.
Yes. And another thing we want to convey is that it's not like a disease that makes you, I feel like this is something that people categorize it as, and that's not true. Autism isn't a disease. In fact, it actually kind of helps you in some ways. Some ways it can be challenging, but those challenges have to just be overcome, just like any other challenge.
I think it's almost like a different wiring. It's like sensory is a little overloaded. I know that Joe has had some sensory challenges in the past. And one of the things that we like to discuss in almost every episode is some of Joe's challenges and what Joe has done to overcome these challenges. And we're going to continue to do that in every episode, because we really, really hope to have a positive impact on
the world. And we want to also convey that message. Autism is not a disease, or it doesn't impair you or anything. We want to kind of convey that to many people who do believe this type of stuff, and it's just not true. I feel like I want to be I want to kind of be an example of how autism isn't something that automatically impairs you, and that it can make you stronger in ways that, we can't really predict. And it's something that that's why I kind of want to see this podcast grow, because I want to convey to the world about my experiences and what I've gone through and how I've kind of changed over the years. It's something I just want to do.
I'm so happy that you're enjoying this, Joe. And let me tell you something, Joe. I'm getting a little emotional right now. It's because I remember that little toddler that you were, and to see that you're doing this right now, it is the most heartwarming thing for me as your dad. We don't live together. I have I have a wife. You have a I have a wife, and I have two stepchildren that live with me. And you live in your house with your family, and your family's about to grow and become more blended as well. And one of the things that I always want to do is stay connected to you, my son.
Yeah,
because we don't live
too.
together, but I love being connected, and this is one of those ways where
we can connect.
We can always stay connected, and if you're enjoying this and the audience is enjoying this, we're going to keep going.
Yep, we are. And anyway, that's it for our IRL segment and our podcast.
Thank you so
much for listening. Like and comment.
And
leave
share
us
it.
a rating and share. Sharing helps. Anyways,
thank you.
Goodbye.
See you next week.
Yeah, and that's it for our podcast this week. If you enjoyed the episode, like we said in the IRL, please comment and share, and we'll see you guys next Saturday. Obviously, we have been trying to upload on Saturdays from now on. Make sure, like I said, to follow to make sure that you actually get a notification when we upload an episode, and we'll see you guys next time.